Hey there, fellow readers. I'm Ankita Kulkarni, the author of When in a Myth, and today I'm going to be reading a few extracts from the first season of my series. To give you guys a bit of a background, When in a Myth is a series of short stories in the genre of horror fiction. These stories are based around Indian myths and hauntings. The extract I'm going to be reading today is from the first season, The Myth of the Wolves of Madhorukha. The story revolves around a father and his young daughter based in a small village in southern India. The villagers have recently sighted killer wolves roaming around the village. The following extract is a short introduction to the commotion these wolf sightings have caused in the lives of the villagers. An inconspicuous part of this village was the Panchayat office, situated in a crumbling old concrete building in the far west corner of the village. Mr. Rao, the Panchayat secretary, could be found lounging around the office, perfecting his poker game with a bunch of dusty old cards or snoring loudly in his revolving chair. He was a timid little man, always seen running around the sarpanch like a loyal lapdog. He wore the same baggy half-buttoned checked shirt and dirty black pants to work every day. Huge rimmed glasses were forever perched on top of his perky little nose, and his mouth was always stuffed with fresh pan leaves and tobacco. But today, the Panchayat office was buzzing with villagers, each one struggling to make their voice heard with their own stories of the yellow-eyed beast that had recently been spotted in the village. Never having had to talk to anyone other than the chaiwala, poor Mr. Rao could be seen running around the place, trying to pacify the buzzing mob and reassure them that the Panchayat was looking into the matter. Yes, listen to me, please. Hey, don't touch that, you idiot. That is government property. You, move back and get into a single line. Please, just listen to me. Sarpanchi will be here in some time and he is aware of the situation. Oi, what did I tell you? You're a couple of village idiots making up stories for your own entertainment. One strapping young lad pushed his way through the crowd and grabbed Mr. Rao by his collar. Mr. Rao let out a little squeal as he shielded his face from the anticipated blow, shaking in the knees and struggling to get away from the angry mob. Sala paltu kutta? What did you just call us? Our crops have been destroyed by some animal that has been roaming through the fields in the night. Krishnappa saw this huge beast one evening when he was coming home late from the fields. Soma Devi, whose house is right on the edge of the village, said that she saw shining yellow eyes in the trees. She even tried to scare the beast away, but it growled viciously at her. Do you really think we would be making up such horrible stories when our wives' and daughters' lives are in danger? Suddenly, there was a commotion at the back of the mob as people began pushing, trying to make way. Mr. Rao could hardly see above the sea of towering heads, but he heard running footsteps, followed by a loud wailing sound. Soma Devi was frantically trying to make her way to the front of the mob. She was in a completely disheveled state. Her sari was in shambles, her hair was in disarray, and her face was caked in mud and tears. She finally saw Mr. Rao and screamed at him. Someone help me, please. I cannot find my Chinna anywhere. Sujata, Chinna, where are you? Please come back to me. Soma Devi collapsed, unconscious on the floor. In her right hand was a torn pink frock covered in bloodstains. Okay, so we just saw how one daughter from the village has been taken away by this mysterious wolf creature. The villagers now decide to form a search party to look for the girl in the forest. After combing through the dense forest, they come to find that this girl had been killed by the Bhedi Manav Shaitan. Now Venkatramana, our main protagonist, is extremely worried for his own daughter's life. In this next extract, we see how Venkata decides to pair up with his friend Ramesh and go into the forest to hunt for this creature and kill it. Venkatramana tightly held Nagamani in his arms as the horrifying images of Sujata's bloody and torn body flashed in front of his eyes. He just couldn't stop thinking of the trauma that little child must have gone through. It fueled his protective instinct for Nagamani, and he decided to hunt the wild animal down and put an end to it for good. Just then, he heard a soft knock on the door. "Venkata, it's me. Please let me in." Ramesh was standing in the doorway with a determined look on his face. He walked straight past Venkata and made his way to the other room, where he began rummaging through the cupboard. Venkatramana looked around to make sure that Nagamani was busy playing with her army of dolls and followed Ramesh to the other room. Ramesh was pulling things out of the cupboard and throwing them onto the floor. He stopped abruptly and emerged with an old axe in his hand. He looked up at Venkata and then looked back at the axe. "You know we have to do this. We cannot let this beast roam around freely in the village. Think of Nagamani and Subbamma. The rumors about this instance being the work of those tantric are going around the village. I just heard Mr. Rao telling everyone in the village square that the tantric are like some weird cult appeasing to the darkest forces that exist in the depths of the forest. He was saying that something about a blood sacrifice being made to the Bhediman of Shaitan. We cannot sit here with our hands crossed and let them take any more children from the village. Ramesh, you know I don't believe in these stupid stories about some forest devil and his band of baboons. You know very well this is just some wild animal that has lost its way and stumbled upon an all-you-can-eat buffet. Whatever it is, we have to put an end to it. You know that big inspector man won't take any action. He will wait for official orders, wait for the forest department, the sarpanchi, until everyone is dead. We have done this many times before to protect our fields from wild animals. Come with me now, and we will be back before sunrise. We can leave Nagamani with my wife and Subbamma." It only took Venkata a second to realize that Ramesh was feeling the same overprotective instinct he had been feeling a minute ago. He immediately headed over to the cupboard, pulled out the scythe he often used in the field, took the axe from Ramesh's hand and wrapped them both in a towel. He did not want Nagamani to see these in their hands and start asking questions. He then went to Nagamani and gently coaxed her to head over to Ramesh's house next door. The Anjaneya forest, though absolutely breathtaking by day, could turn into a living nightmare as darkness took over. Venkatramana and Ramesh gripped their respective weapons tightly as they began walking down the same dirt trail they had followed that morning. The forest started to slowly come alive as an owl that was perched on the branches hooted loudly. They weaved through the thick trees, only guided by the faint lights from the village. A twig snapped loudly as Ramesh stumbled upon a fallen branch. "Shh! Ramesh! Are you trying to invite the wolves over for dinner? We are free bait walking around in their territory. Do you mind keeping it down?" Venkatramana whispered worriedly. "I'm sorry. I cannot see a bloody thing in the darkness. We don't even have the moonlight tonight to guide us through the forest. Can you hold my hand, please?" Venkatramana rolled his eyes at his friend's childish behavior and continued walking towards the cave entrance. He could feel his heart pounding loudly in his ears, his shirt slick with sweat as it stuck to his back even though it was a cold night. Why were his nerves so on end? Hunting was a fun sport for them, and he was confident that he could spot a wolf from a mile away and easily manage to kill it. But something was different tonight. The forest grew quieter and quieter as they continued walking deep into its belly. The eerie silence was interrupted by a sudden rustle, stopping Venkata and Ramesh in their tracks. Suddenly, a mongoose jumped out of the bush and in front of Venkata, almost tripping him over, but he managed to land on all fours. He paused for a second to catch his breath and bring his erratically beating heart under control. He felt a wave of hot, sticky air all over his neck and back. A chill ran down his spine. Without making a sound, he slowly turned around only to see a huge shadow looming over him. It must have been at least 10 feet tall, but all Venkatramana could concentrate on were its topaz yellow eyes, which glowed bright in the darkness. He could feel the ground beneath him tremble as the creature took a step back, opened its mouth, and let out an earth-shattering howl, unlike anything he had ever heard before. Its breathing became ragged as it drooled all over him. Then it lifted its huge paws and struck down ferociously, almost tearing him in half. Venkatramana's instinct kicked in as he rolled over on his left and scrambled to get behind a nearby boulder. He just prayed and hoped that Ramesh was safe and that he wasn't lying somewhere dead in the trees, torn to shreds. The creature howled loudly and slashed at the boulder, behind which Venkata was cowering, viciously. He was truly cornered as the beast kept on striking the boulder, scratching at it with its claws, chipping off bits with each blow. Only a few minutes more, and the creature was sure to uproot the rock entirely and grab Venkata between its ravenous teeth. He tried to extend his hand to reach the scythe, which was lying just a few inches away, but the beast growled loudly and clawed at his hand. Venkatramana groaned in pain as its sharp claws cut through his skin, making it impossible for him to move. Venkata was well and truly cornered, as one wrong move could result in his death at the hands of this beast, leaving Nagamani an orphan. He had to think of some way to distract the beast and get his scythe back. उग्र उग्र भेद मानव प्रचंड मुंड महाशैतान हो प्रेत प्रेत कृतालिया शमशान भूमि राजा हो. A loud chanting began reverberating from somewhere in the trees, smothering the silent skies in a strong negative energy. The beast suddenly went quiet as the chanting continued. Venkata quietly peeked from behind the rock, only to see the creature retreating into the woods, and as suddenly as the chanting had begun, it had stopped, allowing the forest to return to its former silent aura. This was just a small sneak peek into the first season. Watch out for an interesting twist at the end. We have 9 more stories lined up for the coming weeks. I hope you enjoyed this little snippet and will go on to discover the rest of the myths. Read When in a Myth, releasing on 31st October, with new episodes releasing every Sunday only on the Saga Fiction app.